Hey, glad to see you back. So we have a brand new speaking test for Speaking Saturdays. And here we have a very fun and exciting topic, video games. I think some of you might love this. It also seems like a very easy set of questions, especially for the younger people. Well, who am I kidding? Millennials love video games too. Okay, so let's start with part one. Do you play video games? So when I was younger, like when I was a child, well, actually a teenager, 12, 13, 14, we had, again, computers were new back then, and we had all these games like Doom, Wolfenstein, PC games, so I just loved. I remember we had this game called Monkey Island, Zoo Tycoon, all those kind. Oh my god, I love those games. I still like when I think about them right now. I'm like, oh my god, I want to go and play that game. But yeah, I don't know where to find them because none of my laptops have a CD port. And back then you'd buy your game, and yeah, good old times, man. Anyway, but nowadays, I don't really, because again, I'm an adult and I don't have that much time. So yeah, I don't get the time. I'd love to play. Again, I'm not like obsessive. When I say video games, I mean stuff like Purple Place, and most importantly, my favorite video game of all time, The Sims. I would spend, when I was like 13, 14, I'd spend hours of time. Like, I'm like sitting here, it's maybe like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. The next thing I know, it's 1 a.m. and I have to sleep because I have school the next day. So I'd spend hours playing The Sims, and sometimes I still do. So it's very like, oh my God, it's so addictive. But yeah, that's why I try to limit myself, because again, I can very quickly waste my entire day just doing that. So I hold myself back. Would you watch others play video games? Actually, for a brief period of time, I would do that. I would like watch other people's videos where they played The Sims. And I'd like, I don't know, it was kind of fun. Like, okay, here is this completely empty plot of land. I wonder what they're gonna make, what kind of house they're gonna make, what kind of, furnishings they're gonna put in, what kind of layout are they gonna have, how are they gonna plan the whole thing. Sometimes you have these ridiculous challenges like build the tiniest house in The Sims and have it still be functional, and stuff. I don't know, I found it very fascinating. But of course I also realized it was a huge waste of time, honestly. But it's fun, it's entertainment. I mean, it was relaxing. Like, when I'd sit down to eat lunch or dinner or something like that, then I would just watch like a couple minutes. And the way I watch videos is I fast forward everything. So I have my speed set to 2x, sometimes even 3x, sometimes even 4 or 5x, because I'm just looking at their gameplay. I'm just looking at, oh, what do they do? Like, how do they convert this entirely, blank space of land into something beautiful and amazing, Do you think people spend too much time playing video games? Maybe, because video games have really become a thing. I don't understand how an adult is gonna, because I see all these people and they're like, oh, I have a Nintendo Switch and I have a Y and I have a PlayStation and I have, of course I have my PC and I have, oh, my mobile phone also has to be good enough to play games. And I'm like, do you study? Do you have a job? Or no, nothing like that? I mean, because I cannot understand for the life of me, how are you going to, because a video game, I mean, it's not something that you play for 5 or 10 minutes, it's like you have to you have to kill the, whatever. I mean, if you have a shooter game or something like that, or if you have a strategy game, it's just something that you have to spend time on. I'm just thinking there couldn't be anything more unproductive, And trust me, I'm not judging. I mean, I'm a huge waster of my own time, so. But I'm like, I mean, it sounds fun. But then I'd feel bad. I think most people probably spend a lot of time. But then again, people's idea of entertainment has changed. Maybe like 20 years ago, people would like read books for entertainment or maybe go out and meet their friends. But nowadays, everything is digital. So I think that's also just natural, no? Do you prefer playing video games alone or with others? See, when I was younger, we had all these like multiplayer video games online. They were okay, but I really enjoyed playing by myself, and I still do. Like, I play alone. I like, doing things at my own pace. Like, there's a lot of horror video games as well. I mean, multiplayer games can be a bit fun. Like, we have, oh, Age of Empires, for example. So you can have like there's another village, and then there's your village, and you build your village, but then they might attack you, or you might want to attack them, and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's kind of stressful. Like, it takes the joy and the fun away if I'm doing a multiplayer game type of thing. But if I'm playing alone, it's just, I do whatever I want. So I prefer playing alone. Okay, let's go on to part 2. Describe a useful skill that you learned as a teenager. You should say what the skill is, when and how you learned it, why you learned it, and explain how you felt about learning it. Oh, this one is really cool. So I've always kind of been lazy, let's be honest. And especially in school, so we had all these textbooks and stuff, and there was a point in time when I got sick. I don't remember what I had, but I missed like a few weeks of school. So naturally, I had to make up for it. And then I'd see, like, oh my God, I have so much to study before the exam. And how am I going to do this? I didn't even go to school. So what I did was I realized very quickly that the teachers were just telling us, okay, the answer for question 10 is, on page 34, lines 1 to 10, for example. Because my friend would tell me, right? And so I realized, wait a second, I don't even need to. I mean, of course, you have to go to school, you must. But I don't really, the teachers aren't doing anything special, And I realized that if I just, kind of just read the stuff without even, like, necessarily preparing for questions, I would still understand everything. I just need the books, that's it. And then that kind of developed and that changed as I grew. I was a bit older, like, 17, 18, and I went off to high school. I realized that I could take large amounts of text and compress that text into just the most essential bits and pieces of information. So basically, I taught myself how to speed read without really realizing that, oh, that's what I'm doing. It just kind of became, because I love reading, I can process large amounts of, of textual data. So this actually came in very handy later on in college, but of course the way that I went about it in high school was I would, like, let's say you have a question and you have this entire text that you have to learn to respond to that question, right? So I would not memorize the response. I would make my own response with just keywords. Right, so I'd remove all the articles, I'd remove the prepositions, I'd replace them with symbols and stuff. And this was especially helpful in economics. I still remember all my notes, and they were like really compressed, just the keywords, just the nouns, just the verbs, any adjectives, any times, any dates, and stuff like that. So I learned to compress all this data into just the most important bits and pieces. And that would actually come in very handy, like I was saying, in college. So we had this, I don't know, it was like an 120 word paper in economics. I forgot the topic, something, I don't know what it was. But my teacher was like, okay, can you, convert that into a small PowerPoint type of thing? And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I can definitely do that. And I was like, that was perfect for me because, it was a perfect use of my skills because I could take all that, the thing is, of course, reading is supposed to be enjoyable. So writers tend to write like that. But I'm the kind of person that, see, if I'm reading fiction, it's a different thing. But if I'm reading nonfiction, if I'm reading to learn something, I want to get to, the meat of everything as soon as I can. Don't waste my time with fluff. So I was able to hack that 125-page report or study or whatever into just the most important. I think I converted that into maybe, like, I don't know, 12, 13 PowerPoint pages. And, like, I don't mean like PowerPoint pages full of text. I mean like bullet points, just the most important bits and pieces. So that was really, my teacher was really my professor. I mean, she was really impressed as well. And of course it was good for the class because they didn't have to go through the 120 word thing that I did. So yeah, it was such a, an accident, right? Because I didn't know when I was a child that, I'm learning, this thing when I was like 12, 13 and I, had that huge break from school. It just happened. It just happened over time. Okay, now we have part 3 questions. Question number 1. Where do children learn skills in your country? Mostly it's at school. Where else would it be? Of course, you might think, oh, well, there's many other places you could learn skills, but in my country specifically, now, I don't know if things have changed, but at least back when I was a teenager, when I was a child, and until, relatively recently, children spend 8 hours of the day at school and then their parents just send them off. Mine didn't, of course. They're very chill about things, but most parents send their kids off to, these after school coaching centers. So they don't really get to learn skills as much as they get to learn how do I pass really tough exams and get really high scores. So, real skills, again, very few parents are evolved enough to do, like my parents, they never really forced me to do all this stuff. And I was able to develop my skills doing the things I loved. But very few children are afforded or were afforded that opportunity. So the kids that do have good parents, they just get to, like, okay, maybe you like swimming, so okay, we'll put you in a swim class. Maybe you like, something else. Maybe you like to, you would like to learn a martial art or something of that sort, so we'll enroll you someplace. So I think real skills, I don't mean academically, just academically. Of course, those skills are important, but real skills, social skills, other talents, hobbies, stuff like that, that is something where you need a high level of parental involvement because, of course, you have to figure out what is this child good at? What does this child need? So yeah, unfortunately, here it's still the case that they just learn everything at school and they don't really have the time and energy for anything else. Nothing much, other than academic stuff. What important skills should a child learn? I think this is something I'm very passionate about. I don't think that sending a child to a school is a good idea. I'm not anti-education. I'm very pro-education. I'm very pro-learning. I'm still learning stuff and I think you learn until you die. But in terms of skills, I think schools are very, very bad at teaching things that children need for the real world. You know how they always say, oh, I never learned how to do my taxes at school. Yeah, so they're not teaching children, teenagers, children, but of course a child doesn't need to know how to do their taxes because that's a long way away. But they need to teach real life skills, teach children how to be brave, teach them to make mistakes and not be afraid of mistakes. Too often, our society is like, ooh, you should be afraid all the time, don't make mistakes. But mistakes, when you make a mistake is when you learn. So teach them confidence, teach them, public speaking, teach them how to also, be proud of what they have achieved. Real life skills like taking risks. See, risk taking is not something that is encouraged in society, at least in my society. So that is something that needs to change because you need to be able to, trust your intuition. You need to be able to, especially when you're young, that's the right age to be taking all kinds of risks. I don't mean stupid risks, but I think that's a good skill to develop, especially if you want to become someone who goes to a 9 to 5, because again, that's respectable. That's a good, of course, everybody needs security. But I think instead of training children to be worker bees, we should actually be training them to just, the most important, I think, job of parenting, or even teaching a child, is how do I figure out where this child's natural talents lie and how do I encourage them to invest their time and energy into the appropriate venues, right? And so those related skills, that's what a child needs to, focus on. Of course, everybody needs to have basic stuff like social skills and blah, blah, blah. But I think what I just spoke of is a little bit more important. What skills do you think teenagers should have? So I think when you're at that age where you're transitioning from being a child to a teenager, you need to be able to handle your emotions. I think you need to be able to also control your response because again, I mean, just because you had one stressor in the day, that doesn't mean that you give it the power to ruin your entire day, right? So I think that is something. Also, you have this huge surge of energy. Many teenagers don't know what to do with all their energy. So that's another thing where maybe, putting them into a sport or something like that could be useful. Of course, that depends. I mean, some teenagers hate sports. So, of course, you don't push them into it. But you figure out, because there's a lot of frustration there as well. So how to deal with frustration, how to deal with rejection, how to deal with, like I was saying, risk taking is something that I truly believe is very important. Also, how to be independent, because when you're a teenager, you're going to soon move into adulthood. You're going to have to move out. You're going to have to learn to, make decisions on your own. Too often, parents don't let their children make decisions. In my case, like my mom was letting me choose what I wanted to wear when I was like 5 years old too. So I learned that very early on, how to be independent, how to do things by myself. But a lot of kids, teenagers, unfortunately, they don't have the same kind of opportunities. So you have to teach them, okay, this is how you, like, for example, just go and do your own shopping, estimate, how much food you'll need for the next week, or, make a plan for yourself. If you want to learn something, if you want to maybe earn some money, go and apply for a job. All these things, like dealing with the real world, I think that becomes very important when you're in that stage, because the next stage is adulthood. And if you're not prepared for that, if you don't have the right skills, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, you still have adults who are like 30, 40 years old, and they say, oh, I spend more than I make. I don't know how it happens. And, oh, I don't know how to pay my bills. And, oh, I don't know how to deal with all these responsibilities. Come on, how could that? That's where, of course, you cannot really, sorry, you cannot really blame them entirely, because maybe somewhere their parents failed, or just society failed in general. Of course, I do think that people need to take responsibility for themselves, but yeah, that I think is a classic example of parents or teachers not teaching the right skills to teenagers to help them transition into adulthood smoothly. What are the differences between children learning skills and adults learning skills? So I think children actually do better because they have no shame. They're like, I'll try something. Adults are very conscious, I've seen. They don't want to screw up. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to embarrass themselves. But children don't care. And, the great thing is that of course, we don't shame children either. Sometimes we might shame adults. So that, of course, I think the way society treats children and adults obviously, impacts how they learn. But children are very receptive. They're also just very open to things. Adults can be a bit closed off. And, a child might be willing to learn just about anything that catches his or her fancy. But an adult will always kind of think more practically. Because again, when you're older, you have demands on your time. You can't really just, oh, I want to learn jujitsu. I mean, yeah, some people might be able to do that, but not everyone, not most people anyway. So an adult would pick something more practical, like they wouldn't just learn a language for fun, but they might think, okay, will learning this language help me in my career, right? Then I'll do it. Otherwise, very few people do that. But a child might be like, oh, I heard this song in Italian. Oh, great, I want to learn Italian. And, they'll do that. But an adult, that's like super unlikely for them. So yeah, children are more open. They're, like I was saying, they're more receptive. They don't care as much, not afraid to embarrass themselves, because they don't feel that embarrassment. So they tend to learn better because they're not, concerned about, embarrassing themselves. Adult learning performances tend to not, the results tend to not be as good, just because, they're kind of, so preoccupied. Oh, what will other people think of me? But children, they don't care about that. Right, so that was today's test. It went on a bit longer, didn't it? But I hope you find that, enjoyable. If you did, just leave a like and a comment down below. If you'd like to see something else on the channel, if you'd like me to modify or change these tests in any way, I mean, I'm open to all kinds of suggestions. So, yep, let me know. And don't forget to tune in again. We have tons and tons of videos, so go watch the rest of them as well. All right then, until the next video. Bye-bye.